Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining me at Big Question, Small Steps. My name is Amanda, and I'm so glad to see you today. And today, we are moving on to the next in our series, talking about the Seventh Day Adventists. Today, we are talking about how they live their lives. What are women's roles? What's the hierarchy of this organization? We're going to talk about all that and more. So let's not waste another moment. Let's hit the intro and we'll begin. Okay, so we're actually going to start off talking about the hierarchy of the church. Remember, the family is a very important part of the Seventh Day Adventists. So if you are looking at the church, and remember, we've got 19 million people in this denomination. Most of them are not in the U.S. Their church community is of utmost importance to them. There's the family and the church community. If a Seventh Day Adventist family is not doing something with their family, they're doing something with their church family, because they believe very strongly with who you are surrounding yourself with. You are opening yourself up to evil and temptation. So they believe that who you're surrounding yourself with is very important. So they try to keep close tabs on what people are doing and where. Okay, so let's talk about the hierarchy first. So the church worldwide is divided up into 13 different regions. Okay, these regions have a place where they're helping govern the smaller area. So worldwide governing body, every region, 13 of them, has a representative. They go, they talk about different things. They bring ideas back to their region to be discerned to their members, okay? From their worldwide area, so everybody belongs to a region, there is what's known as a union conference, okay? Now, in this union, that would be more of like a continental area. So it's a smaller group, a smaller place. You have your representation. So you have the world, you have a union, and then you have a conference. A conference could be in a state if you have multiple Seventh-day Adventist churches in your state. It could be in a couple of local churches, state area. Okay, and then you have the local church. So if you went backwards, it's the local church, the conference, the union, and then the world. Okay, so 4 different levels. In the world, there's 13 different regions. That's the word I was looking for. My apologies for that hesitation. There is also a hierarchy within the church itself, the local church. Okay, there are people who are leaders. These leaders are known as deacons. Deacons are males, and they're typically elders from the church. They don't have necessarily special training, but they have been leaders of the church. They have been members of the church. They have been upstanding individuals. And these are the people that help guide and take lesser roles. So they might be the ushers or the treasurer or the teacher within the church. They don't have formal teaching, but they have shown themselves to be worthy people, upstanding individuals. They can lead in different ways. Okay? Now, if you wanted to be a pastor in the Seventh Day Adventists, because they do have pastors, they typically need a Bachelor of Science in theology and a master's degree in divinity or theology. Okay, now you have to have this level of education because you need to be able to speak and understand God's word more fully than the normal person, so you can help guide others. Very important. Now, if you were going to go to a school to get your theology degree, there are certainly two schools in particular that they recommend more frequently. Okay, you can go to get a Master's of Divinity or a Master of Theology in any denomination, but there are two schools in particular that the Seventh Day Adventists strongly recommend. That would be the HMS Richards School of Divinity in La Sierra and the Theology Seminary at Andrews University. Now, once you complete your education, like I said, these theology schools, it's not just a theology school for Seventh-day Adventists. There's not enough people going to be pastors of Seventh-day Adventists, quite honestly, to make that financially work. Getting a master's of theology gets you that knowledge, and then after you have that knowledge, it's up to you to discern which denomination you believe you're called to go and serve. Okay, so again, you can go to a Master's of Divinity school and you can get a degree the same as a Seventh-day Adventist. You could have a Baptist person you could hit in there. You could have somebody from the United Church of Christ. You could have somebody from a different Protestant denomination. You wouldn't typically have anybody from the Catholic denomination. They have their own theology programs. You could. It wouldn't be unheard of, but it wouldn't be typical of that. Okay? So after they after they obtain their degree, then the next step is they have to petition or say, this is the denomination that I want to serve. Okay, just like with any other Christian denomination, once you have your degree, you're going to figure out where you fit, and they would petition for licensure with the Seventh-day Adventist Conference. So once they are accepted, they'll have an interview with this conference people, and they'll kind of say, this is why I've chosen this, and then they can, if approved, basically put their application in wherever there is an opening to figure out where they're going. And that's how you become a pastor of a Seventh-day Adventist church. Okay? Now, I mentioned earlier that the deacons are males. And that there's a reason for that. Males are the leader of essentially everything in the church. The females are encouraged to make family their priority. They are encouraged to teach the children at home. Children are encouraged not to attend public school because public school may increase their awareness and their proximity to evil thinkings and doings. And again, it's the parents' responsibility to guard their children and raise them upright. So children are encouraged to be taught at home. If a woman needs to have a job outside the home, they should be part-time, if at all. Again, they really are encouraged to not have a role as a job outside of the home. They are encouraged to make home their job, their children their job. But if they have to, it should certainly be part-time. They have no role in decision-making within the church. Their thought on that is that it's not a woman's nature to weigh matters objectively. They are too emotionally charged. Yep, that's what they have. So in any decision making of the church in the Seventh-day Adventist, it's always the men who have the vote. Now, a wife could certainly tell their husband what they think, and the husband may take it into consideration, but it is the men who are supposed to be more objective and more level-headed that will make the decisions. Now, this was brought to light again in 1987. There was a big surge about women's rights and trying to make things a little bit more equal. And they decided at that occasion that unity is the supreme evidence to the world of the reality of the church's spiritual contact with Jesus. They said it was stated in John 17, verse 21, that it should be the highest priority of the church's objectives to maintain that unity. And changing the role of women and their ability to work and have a voice goes against this unity and should not be entertained. So there you go. I can completely understand and see that women tend to be emotional at times, because I myself am rather emotional at times, and I can be rather dramatic at times, and my amazing boyfriend will attest that sometimes I don't think clearly because I'm thinking too emotionally. Just like many other women, it's not a sin or anything like that. And men do tend to think more logically, but I, as somebody who is a borderline feminist, do struggle at times with the idea that women can't have a role and they box us in because we are too emotional. Of course, you can't have any ideas. If you speak out, then you may be unbalancing or minimize a man's voice, and that's a tough pill to swallow for me. Going to be honest with that. If you take a look at life in general, let's look at that next. So the diet or the food that you eat as a Seventh Day Adventist, you would follow the Old Testament and their dietary restrictions or regulations, I should call them, with particular emphasis on health development. So in the Old Testament, they talk about things like you shouldn't eat an animal with cloven hooves and split, and if they chew their cud, like they have to have certain things. To eat a fish, it needs to have both skin, scales, and fins. You can't eat bugs. You can't eat different things like that. The Seventh-day Adventists take it one step farther. They don't do meat at all. If they do meat, it is very, very rare that they do meat. Typically, they are vegetarians or vegans. And they put great emphasis on also avoiding stimulants such as narcotics. I mentioned earlier about alcohol, tobacco, even chocolate and soda. Some will avoid completely. They are very focused on health development, which is an awesome thing because they've done amazing works as far as creating hospitals and different situations where they can learn so much about the body because they care so much about their health. It's led to some amazing things. For example, did you know that the breakfast cereal that many people enjoy in the morning before school or whatever is actually attributed to the Seventh-day Adventists? John Harvey Kellogg and his brother W.K. Kellogg were actually Seventh-day Adventists, and they wanted to create a healthy breakfast cereal to meet the needs of the growing society that was heading to work. C.W. Post was another Seventh-day Adventist, and he followed their same suit. They saw a market and a need for people to take care of themselves, and they thought the easiest way to do this was to create this cereal that had the vitamins that you needed to start your day off right. And they created it. So thank you, Seventh-day Adventists, for that. Very, very, very focused on health development. Like I said earlier, they have made possible for many medical advances just because they have medical mission hospitals, they build clinics, they build sanitariums across the world. Around the United States, across the world. It's just amazing to think of all the things that they have changed because of their beliefs, and they stand so firmly on what they believe. So very cool things. I am going to round out today's video, but I will talk about holidays and how they celebrate the holidays. So let's jump right on into it. So Christmas is a holiday that the Seventh-day Adventists do celebrate. Many Christian denominations will celebrate either with a Santa version, or they'll have extra worship services. They might do candles, things like that. Seventh-day Adventists aren't going to do all of that. They believe that Christmas is a time to be thankful and joyful and spend time with their family. However, they don't do the whole Santa thing. They don't do a lot of decorations with Christmas trees and things like that. They may give one gift to each other as a gift of love and joy, but it's more about spending time as a family. Easter is another big holiday in many Christian denominations. In the Seventh Day Adventists, on Easter, the pastor will preach about the life of Jesus, not the death. And some families actually choose to avoid Easter in its entirety because of the pagan roots. They believe that they might eat dinner together, but they try to avoid egg hunts and things like that because, again, it could very possibly have pagan roots, with the god of fertility being the egg, and that's just what they do. Now, if you were a Seventh Day Adventist and when it was Easter, you may still have a meal with your family. It's interesting that on Easter in the Seventh Day Adventists, they focus on the life of Jesus, what he did, how they should act, instead of, oh, he died and he's bringing heaven possible. They don't focus on that, whereas in many other Christian denominations, they absolutely do. They focus on the miracle of Jesus rising from the dead and how only God's Son could do that. So just a different take on those two different holidays. Very intriguing. In Halloween, when that comes around, they avoid it. They avoid it hardcore because they believe it is very spiritually and biblically concerning. It has a lot of pagan roots. They say there's a lot of devil entertaining and demon entertaining that they don't want anything to do with, so they avoid Halloween. As general, they do not participate in dancing, and they only listen to spiritual music. Now, there is a lot of Christian music out there in many different formats. There's country Christian, there's pop Christian, there's rock Christian, there's hard rock Christian. There's a lot of different music out there, but one thing they will not entertain is non-religious music, and they certainly would not have dancing. So if you were at a wedding, for example, because they do have weddings, they believe that families are very important, you would have a wedding, but you would have food and you may have some religious music, but you would not see people dancing. So just different things, and I enjoy learning different things about different denominations and different religions because, as we've said, the more you know, the more you grow. So if you enjoyed today's presentation, please go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, because our next presentation is going to be a great one. We are going to talk about what to expect if you are going to a Seventh Day Adventist worship service. And we're going to also talk about if you wanted to become a Seventh Day Adventist member, what would you have to do in order to convert? So don't forget, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next time. Remember to take care of yourself, and remember, the more you know, the more you grow. Keep on learning. See you soon. Bye-bye.